Hi, I'm Dr. Kathy Campbell, and we're going to talk a little bit about the chemistry of life. So, food is the chemistry of life. It is a critical factor that our bodies absolutely need to function every day. We are basically a bag of chemistry with a dose of God. So let's talk about a little bit how the food ends up being the energy that you actually need to function. So we start with the concept of nutrients. So nutrients are foods and liquids that supply the body with the chemicals necessary for metabolism, necessary for life. Essential nutrients are those entities that the body can't make, cannot synthesize, or can't synthesize enough to meet the needs of our metabolism in our life. So essential nutrients we have to have, but our body doesn't really make, so we've got to get them from outside of our own source. So in the nutrient field, there's two big categories. The first one is macronutrients, which is big nutrients, and that's our protein, fat, and carbohydrates. Then there's micronutrients, and they include minerals, vitamins, and water. And it's the micronutrients that are necessary to have the macronutrients break down and be utilized as the precursor for energy. So let's talk about this. Imagine that your cells are a factory. And when we look at this assembly line, you can see that the car at the Ford plant is going through, and at each station, there's critical nuts and bolts and tires and steering wheels that get put on that car as it moves down the assembly line. And without enough nuts and bolts, the car stops, or it won't be completed, or it will be damaged. And if you look at this picture, look at all the people that are there to support, all the nuts and bolts that are there to support the assembly of that car. In our cells, we have many different assembly lines. So let's see if we can identify a little bit of what our body needs to make critical energy. The critical energy in our body is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And it is a very interesting little molecule, and you can consider it a battery pack. And it's basically 3 little magnets of phosphate and oxygen. And within each of those magnetic groupings is energy. And just like it takes energy to pull those magnets apart, with regard to ATP molecule, there's lots of energy there to be utilized for the function of our body, to keep us warm, to beat our heart. Critical to the function of a human and most life is the production of ATP. Consider it the battery pack of life. So we look at the cellular assembly line with regard to energy production. There's actually a few of them here, but we're going to look at those macronutrients and see how they quickly get broken down along these assembly lines. So you've got the 3 macros: protein, carbohydrates, and fat. And with the process of digestion, we start getting them broken down into their little bitty parts. We get amino acids, we get fatty acids or glycerols, and then carbohydrate gets broken down to its basic function, which is glucose. And what's fascinating, if this assembly line works really well, $1 of glucose can be turned into $36 of energy currency, which is ATP. That's a pretty good compounding return on investment. So in this assembly line of glycolysis, the carbohydrates are broken down to glucose, and then it goes to the next assembly line place, which is pyruvic acid. It goes to acetyl-CoA, and then it goes to the Krebs cycle. And within that, you end up with ATP, and then you end up with oxygen is utilized, and you get water as waste. Pretty critical. But what are the nuts and bolts that have to move this along the assembly line? Well, that's where our micronutrients come along. We've got B vitamins, B1, B2, B3, B6, manganese, magnesium, biotin, lipoic acid, CoQ10, cysteine, glutathione. These are all the assembly components at each assembly line. These are the nuts and bolts necessary for life and necessarily for energy production. So imagine one heart cell, not the whole heart muscle, not a bit of the tissue. One cardiac cell has an estimated 5,000 factories, 5,000 different mitochondria where this energy production goes. And within each mitochondria, there is an estimated 17,000 assembly lines in the electron transport chain. That is crazy. If you do the math, we need a lot of nuts and bolts. The human will typically use up his entire body weight of ATP, this little bitty molecule, over the course of the day. Their body weight in ATP every day. So, what happens if you don't have enough chemical parts on the assembly line? Well, we start having dysfunction and deficiencies. So a nutrient deficiency is an inadequate supply of essential nutrients, such as the vitamins and the minerals, from a lack of consumption or absorption in the diet, resulting from malnourishment or disease. So if you eat a good diet and you take a lot of supplements, but you don't absorb them through your gut, it's like you didn't eat them. So a nutrient deficiency is not enough from consumption or absorption and will result in disease. Nutrient depletion is to deplete or seriously exhaust the abundance of supply of nutrients, such as in the soil or just within ourselves. So let's say you have a very demanding life for a period of time. Your body actually needs more energy. So what used to be enough of these nutrients, all of a sudden you have depleted and you don't have enough. There's other reasons we might have nutrient depletion, and our modern medications are very much contributing to that. So a drug-induced nutrient depletion occurs when the medications we take for our chronic health conditions block the absorption, storage, metabolism, or synthesis of essential nutrients in the body. So we know many of the medications that we are consuming in our society are actually causing nutrient depletion, and it is something you should speak to your pharmacist about to see if that's applied to you. What if we had something that could have a 24% reduction in the risk of heart disease, 33% reduction in the risk of stroke, 28% reduction in cardiovascular disease, and 13% reduction of risk in total cancer, 31% reduction in dying prematurely? Boy, I don't know about you, I would sign up for that. What would have all this improvement of health? Well, we know that 10 servings of vegetables a day contributes to a level of health that is unprecedented in our current health system. We know that these plants, these vegetables, actually have the nutrients that are critical to the chemical factory that is going on in your body every day. So, what is foundational to the optimal ATP or energy production is food. It is the chemistry of life, but it is the food that God made. It must be acquired. We got to find it. We've got to digest it. We need to absorb it into the tissue, into the cell, through the cytoplasm, and into the factory, into the mitochondria. So it takes a large amount of nutrients and cofactors to actually get inside the cell. Everybody kind of has been told that you've got to eat less and exercise more. And I'm here to tell you we've got to eat a heck of a lot of the right stuff. And most of that is plants. Plants, vegetables, all the stuff that God put on this green earth for us to consume. And we need to eat a heck of a lot more than that has been showing up in our culture the last several decades. So we must eat like our lives depend on it, because it does. I'm Dr. Kathy Campbell. I really hope this helps you to understand that food is the chemistry of life, and let's work on getting our nutrition in and having a life that is fantastic.